There are three types of Splunk deployments: single instance, distributed, and of course, Splunk in the cloud. No matter which deployment you use, Splunk performs the same three functions: data input, parsing and indexing, and searching. To scale your system, you can split this functionality across multiple specialized instances of Splunk Enterprise. That's right, no matter how large you scale, you are only ever installing Splunk Enterprise. You're just configuring it differently for different functions. There is one exception, and that is a universal forwarder. A universal forwarder is a very lightweight agent that sits on some machines and forwards data to your Splunk Enterprise instances. During the input phase, Splunk consumes the data from the sources, including forwarders. Splunk does not look at the data contents here. That happens during the next phase, which is parsing. Parsing happens on either an indexer or a heavy forwarder. Both an indexer and a heavy forwarder are simply installations of Splunk Enterprise configured in a particular way. During the parsing phase, Splunk examines, analyzes, and transforms the data. It identifies the timestamps, and it annotates the data with Splunk metadata. The next phase is indexing. In the indexing phase, Splunk takes the parsed data and writes it to indexes on disk in the form of flat files stored on the indexer in buckets. During the searching phase, Splunk manages all aspects of how the user interacts with the data. These are the physical components that make up a Splunk deployment. They can be configured to serve one of the three functions of Splunk that we just talked about: data input, parsing and indexing, and searching. There are only two different software packages you need to build any of these components, as I said: universal forwarders, and this is a specific light software package that has minimal configuration. And then everything else is a full version of Splunk Enterprise. You just configure it differently based on which function you want it to do. So let's take a look at three deployment scenarios. The first one is a departmental deployment. For a departmental deployment, we have a single search head that also serves as an indexer. So this is one Splunk Enterprise installation. It can be installed on Windows or Linux or in the cloud. In this scenario, we have up to 10 forwarders, either universal or heavy forwarders, forwarding data into our combined Splunk search head indexer. And this is appropriate for up to 10 users. The second scenario is a small enterprise deployment. In this deployment, we have a single independent search head, we have 2 to 3 load-balanced indexers, and we have up to 200 forwarders. Notice here that the search head and the indexers are separate Splunk Enterprise installations. The third type of deployment has nearly infinite scalability superpowers. In this configuration, we build search head clusters, indexer clusters, or both, and this allows for near boundless horizontal scalability. We can accommodate thousands of forwarders in this model. Here's what clustering does. An indexer cluster is a group of Splunk Enterprise indexers that are configured to replicate each other's data so that the system keeps multiple copies of all data. This process is known as index replication. By maintaining multiple identical copies of Splunk Enterprise data, the cluster prevents data loss while promoting data availability for searching. Splunk Enterprise clusters feature automatic failover from one indexer to the next. This means that if one or more indexers fail, incoming data continues to get indexed and indexed data continues to be searchable. A search head cluster is a group of search heads that serves as a central resource for searching. The search heads share knowledge objects, apps, and all other configurations. You can run the same searches, view the same dashboards, and access the same search results from any search head in the cluster. Notice something else here. We also have a deployment server or a deployer. The deployer is a Splunk Enterprise instance that you use to distribute apps and certain other configuration updates to the search head cluster members. The set of updates that the deployer distributes is called the configuration bundle. Let's talk about deploying Splunk in the cloud. Splunk Cloud has two major offerings. We have self-service, which is kind of limited to 20 gig of data ingestion, no Active Directory and single sign-on support, and 20 concurrent searches. A managed Splunk deployment in the cloud, however, is where you work with your Splunk representative to build out a custom deployment in Splunk Cloud using one of the deployment models that we talked about just a minute ago.